Hi everyone, Anthony here again, and I'm here with our culinary expert Tom Alvarez, and he's going to give us some tips and tricks on how to cook your St. Patrick's Day meal. So Tom, what do we have here?
Anthony, we have our Woodson & James corned beef. This is our own brand. The marbling is consistent through all of them. You really can't pick out a bad corned beef. You want a little bit of fat to keep the meat tender. Also, ours come with this pickling spice. You want the pickling spices because it adds a little bit of flavor to your corned beef. Next, we have our cabbage, potatoes, and carrots. I prefer the carrots with the stems on them. It's just presentation. We also threw in some rye bread and mustard.
So Tom, what tools do we need to prepare this meal?
We have a big pot. We have a chef's knife. It's important not to use a serrated knife when cutting the corned beef. We have our cutting board and a carrot peeler.
All right, I think I got this so far. So what's next?
All right, Anthony, this is where it gets real complicated. Take your pot, fill it 3/4 of the way with water, open your corned beef, and put it in the pot. This is the optional part. Take your pickling spices, dump it in the water, and you're ready to go. Turn that on medium heat and let this cook for a minimum of 2 hours. But if you turn it down low, you can let it simmer all day. The great thing about the corned beef is you can't screw it up. The longer you cook it, the better it gets.
Are there any different ways to cook this?
You can put this corned beef into a crock pot on low and let it cook for 8 hours. When you come home, you'll be ready to add your ingredients. First, we're gonna start with the cabbage. This is very simple. All we're gonna do is quarter this. You wanna make sure that you shave off a little bit of the bottom so that you're working with a flat surface. You don't want this rolling around while you're trying to cut it. Next, you're gonna take and quarter the cabbage. You don't wanna cut it up into small pieces because when you put it in your pot, it's gonna fall apart. Next, we have our red potatoes. Same thing. We're just gonna quarter these, Anthony.
How many potatoes do you need with your meal?
I always like to have extra. I usually buy a 5-pound bag. And our final ingredient are carrots. All we need to do here is peel the carrots down. Again, I like to use the ones with the stalk. We take the tops off, leaving a little bit of the green stem, and the carrots are ready to go. It gives a nice presentation after they're boiled. What I like to do next is rinse all the ingredients before I put them in the pot.
So Tom, how long do we wait before we add the rest of the ingredients?
About 20 minutes before you serve. So this can be done when you get home at the end of the day. If you put it in the slow cooker, you turn it up to high, put your ingredients in, set your table. By the time you're ready, they're cooked.
Wow, Tom, this smells great. So what else can you do to enhance the flavor?
Well, Anthony, some people like to add root beer, 7-Up, even beer. Depends on what you like. The root beer and 7-Up, the sugar in it, gives it a sweeter flavor and kind of cuts down on the salt. The beer, some people just like the flavor of the beer. Any of the carbonated beverages will help break down the corned beef. Remember, Anthony, this is boiling hot. So when you remove your vegetables, you want to use tongs. Be very careful because these are tender and you don't want to break them apart. After our ingredients are all out of the pot, let our corned beef sit for a few minutes so it's not really hot when you're slicing it. You want to make sure you slice against the grain. See how the meat starts to break apart? You know you're cutting it the wrong way. You see how the meat holds together when you slice it that way?
Yeah, it looks great. So now that everything's cooked, how do we serve it?
Well, Anthony, some people like to serve it the traditional way with the carrots, potatoes, corned beef, and cabbage. And other people just like to simply make a sandwich with mustard and corned beef on it.
Now what?
Come on, Anthony, we eat.
It's so good! Eat a sandwich, it's so good.